That is my second grade class, ladies and gentlemen. That is my second grade class. Where is Jason? Sucking up to the teacher at a young age. Her name was Miss Phelps. Miss Phelps. This was that period in American history where all second grade teachers looked perpetually 65. You will see the white shirt all the way up to the chin. It had so much commercial grade starch in it that when she hugged you, it sounded like cellophane. And yet I absolutely adored her. I could not wait to get to school. She was one of those gifted, magical teachers that every time you showed up, she just had a smile on her face, and it was, come on in and let's do something cool today. And I had her for first and second grade. And I just absolutely couldn't have been a happier little guy, given the wonderful parents I had and her as my first and second grade teacher. But beyond being one of those wonderful human beings who just invited you into her life, she was also a great teacher. And long before Howard Gardner and multiple intelligences, she knew that every kid learned and expressed himself or herself in their own way. She had that intuition about it. And I will never forget, one time we were studying dinosaurs. And for some reason I could not memorize their names. And she came up to me and she said, "Jason, you love to tell stories. Why don't you name them and create stories about them?" And forever after, they became Stegosaurus Stan and Tyrannosaurus Tom. Does storytelling work in education? Well, that was 50 years ago. I would say so. She is what I would call a door opener. She's always looking for that door to open for that individual student. Try this one, that doesn't work. That one, how about that? Ah, that's your door. And they come into my class that way. And she was absolutely gifted in that respect. And while I'm at it, I want to thank my 10th grade music teacher. That's him on the left, that's me on the right. His name was John Hasselbeck. Now, this was the period in American history known as Beatlemania. And for those of you who are not members of AARP, you will need to find an old person, or you will need to go to YouTube and ask about Beatlemania, because here was the deal. 4 guys came over from Liverpool named the Beatles. They had long hair, and that, you can still see their ears. It meant their hair swooped down like that and touched the tops of their eyebrows. It made our parents livid. They had long hair. Grown-up women who reminded us of our own mothers would go watch these guys. They would listen to them for 15 seconds, scream and fit out. And me and all my friends in 10th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, we're sitting there watching this happen, and we say, "Hey, music, that looks like a good career." And off we went, bound and determined not to let our lack of talent stop us. There was a lot of bad, loud music back then. I'm happy to say that I can. But here's the deal. In 10th grade, I was playing in a rock and roll band. And I say, bound and determined not to let my lack of talent stop me. The reality is I had talent, but I had it in my ears. I didn't really have it in my fingers. I mean, I could hear things much better than I could play things. And I could put on a 45, put on a 45, sit at the piano, and sort of listen, pick up the needle, go like that, and I could hear music. It said very, very clearly in the prerequisites for a music theory course that he was teaching that you needed to be able to read music. I could not read music, or I could read music the way most of you can. Every good boy deserves fudge, so that's probably enough sharp, and the song's over, right? I mean, I had no automaticity with it whatsoever. So there it was. I wanted to take his music theory course because I just knew in my bones that that was the next step for me as a musician, was to take that course. And I'd go up to him and I said, "Mr. Hasselbeck, I'm in a rock and roll band. I don't read music. I know everybody else in this course plays in the band. They can read music, but I think I can hear music." And I explained the situation. And he listened to me and he said, "Well, you know what? It's a little unorthodox, but I'll tell you what. I will give you a listening test." He gave me a listening test. I passed it, and I got one of the best grades in that class. I did better than Marcia, the piccolo player. She really didn't want me there because I couldn't read music. I wasn't in the club. And God bless John Hasselbeck, who gave me a life of music, because he opened that door for me. He opened that door for me. He was a door opener in much the same way as Miss Phelps was a door opener. I'm telling you all this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I just retired from my teacher retirement system, and I will tell you that the only thing that I really care about, the only metric close to my heart in terms of looking back over 28 years in the educational system is, was I as good as Ms. Phelps and John Hasselbeck in terms of opening doors for kids and students. That's, you know, and all the other stuff, it's, you know, the meetings, I mean, you just don't sit there, you know, in your rocking chair and go, God, I wish I had said more at that meeting. You know? That doesn't happen. You just sit there and say, did I open all the doors I could for kids? Because that's the only thing really that you really care about when it's all over. Was I a door opener? And the other reason that I'm telling you this is because I believe our kids are banging on the door. Banging on the door to get in. They're banging on the door saying, if you will just let me in with my iPod and my iPhone and my iPad and my digital story and my movie and my mashup and my Second Life and my this and my that, I will show you what I know. But we control the door. And by and large, we don't let them in. By and large, we don't let them in. By and large, they live two lives. I love that because it really makes administrators squirm for some reason. I'm going to play this up. This is 30 seconds long. That is the first 30 seconds of the third movement of a string quartet that I wrote and performed on my now ancient Korg OMW synthesizer, which weighed 42 pounds, which was replaced by a keyboard that weighs about 12 ounces. And I played that for you because that is my ringtone. That is, you call me and that's what I hear. And you might be saying to yourself, well, big deal, my 12-year-old can do that. You're right, your 12-year-old can do that. So I guess the big deal is that it's no big deal. But the big deal is also that if I would have told you 15, 20 years ago that you would be walking around with your telephone in your pocket playing original music when someone called you, you would have told me I was crazy. Some of you maybe 10 years ago, and that would have been absolutely nuts. And that brings to mind the question that is always before us now is, what seems so absolutely nuts today, whether it's Second Life or whatever it is to you, that seems so absolutely nuts today that it virtually guarantees that your kids are using it right now and are getting an education from it, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. The real question for us is, are we going to force our kids to live one life or two? Because they live two lives. They unplug when they come to school, and then they go home and plug back in. And in between class, and probably while you're talking, they're plugged in maybe a little bit. You just don't know about it. Or are we at the point where we're ready to take it on, and we are ready to say, you know what, this is absolutely crazy. There are so many ethical issues here. There's so many behavioral issues, social issues, not to mention all the academic issues that we are ready. We are at the point where we're going to say, okay, kids, bring your stuff. It is part of life. And we really need to deal with it. Because the reality is, I call these things screezels. You take a screen and an easel and you put it together and you get a screezel. Because, now, let me back up just a minute. Most of you are like ed tech people, right? See, you're not normal. I'm used to talking to normal people. You know, they don't do what we do for a living, so each one of you needs to take one huge step back out of your normal circle of friends to really appreciate the things that I'm saying. But the other 95% of the population don't see this as normal whatsoever. We might, they don't. But the reality is that for most kids, this is not just where they go to talk. This is where we go to talk. This is where we go to consume stuff. This is where they go to make stuff. This is where they go to put things together, to make mashups. It's a squeezle to them. They make stuff there. That young lady right there, if you saw her in the park 15 years ago, you would have called the cops. Now it's absolutely nothing. She's on 2 squeezles at once. No big deal. No big. I mean, geez, even adults do that. And actually, she's on television. Squeezle number 3, huge squeezle. When I grew up, 3 channels of TV. Now there's 500, and God knows how many we really have if you want to count every TV channel that's coming out of someone's living room. And actually, that whole thing is part of the movie, Squeezle number 4. And just think of all that entails, all the critical thinking and creativity and innovation, all those things that No Child Left Behind will deal with, they're all right there. And actually, those people like that movie so much that they're illegally downloading. Unfortunately, there's a monitoring system. And fortunately, they're going to beam that over to Big Brother. And apparently, those eyeglasses actually exist. And he puts out an APB to all his field operatives, one of whom is an off-track betting parlor. Another one's in second line. And then there's this guy, and I don't really know who he is. I saw that and I said, may I use this for this purpose? And he said, yes, you may. So I did. They're absolutely everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. And it's not just where we go to consume stuff. It's where, especially for our kids, where they go to make stuff. The question really for us is 1 life or 2 for our kids. Because right now it's 2, and we do not get a chance to interact with them on all those really, really important issues of digital citizenship that surround the use of this technology, because we don't encourage them to bring this up to school. We don't know what to do with it once it's there. Bottom line is this: literacy means consuming and producing the media forms of the day, whatever they are. It's always been the case. It's always been the case. And what that means is students need to be able to write well whatever they read. That's always been the case. But up until fairly recently, we have only been able to consume new media. And then in the last 5, 10 years, I mean, for those of you in this room, probably 10 years, but for the other 95% of the population in the last 3 to 5 years, it's become very easy to create new media. And so we don't have an excuse for just consuming it anymore. We absolutely, if we want to be fully literate, absolutely must be able to write. If somebody knew how to read but didn't know how to write, would you consider them literate? No, you wouldn't. You'd consider them half literate. And yet, that is a lot of what this amounts to. They're fearless with the technology. Doesn't mean they know how to write it well. God love them. I have done hundreds, I want to say thousands of media projects with kids. I would not say they automatically, naturally tend towards real clear, articulate media production. They don't. They don't do that. And they really need us. And they don't need us to be the biggest geek in the room. They need us to set standards for them that they may be a little lax in setting for themselves.